Continuing through the male reproductive system, we have to touch on the actual urethra again. Now, we've mentioned the urethra back in the urinary system for conveying urine. We have to mention it here again because now it conveys semen as well. The urethra itself has 3 main regions to it, which we pointed out in the last video. I just want to mention them again here to make sure you're aware. You have the prostatic urethra. That's the region of the urethra that's inside the prostate gland. We have the membranous urethra. That's the portion of the urethra that is inside the membranous layering on the bottom of the cavity. And then we have the spongy urethra. Spongy urethra is what's actually inside the penis itself. So 3 different regions of the male urethra. So let's start looking at some of these accessory glands. Accessory glands because they're not actually in the pathway of the actual sperm production. So first off, we have seminal vesicles. Now, the seminal vesicles are going to join the ductus deferens as it leads into the prostate, remember. So what we have here is producing an alkaline seminal fluid. This is, give or take, about 70% of the volume of semen. We'll get to the rest of that volume in a second, but for now, the actual seminal vesicles are producing about 70% of the volume. Now, you're going to have fructose in here, for example. Fructose gives nutrients to the sperm. You're going to have ascorbic acid, prostaglandins. These are aiding in motility of the sperm. Prostaglandins, especially once the sperm is inside the female system. And we'll get to that a little more later when we talk about semen. But the duct here again, as I mentioned, joins the ductus deferens and it forms what's known as the ejaculatory duct. That ejaculatory duct is inside the prostate gland because the prostate gland can control which one of the ducts is open at a time. So that is the seminal vesicles. So the prostate gland is going to be controlling that ejaculatory duct as well as the actual prostatic urethra. So it takes that ejaculatory duct and either closes it down or leaves it open, and same thing the prostatic urethra closes or opens. The idea is the prostate gland is going to control which one of the ducts is open, preventing, for example, semen coming through the ejaculatory duct from going back up into the actual urinary bladder, or preventing urine coming down and going back up into the reproductive system. So the prostate helps control which duct is open, making sure that it's heading out of the body and not back up into the wrong system. But the prostate is also going to secrete this slightly acidic fluid. This is making up the remaining amount of the semen. So we're having the 2 different ducts, the 2 different glands here, producing the entire volume of the semen. But now we're containing things like citrate enzymes, coagulating enzymes, PSA or prostate-specific enzymes, and antigens. There's a lot of different parts and pieces here. All these play a very specific role in the semen and what it's going to do. And we'll get to that a little later in the video. But one of the big things also, besides controlling which system is working, urinary or reproductive, is the activation of sperm. So yes, they're motile, they can move, but they weren't fully activated to actually serve their purpose. So now the prostate gland will be activating the sperm. And then we have the bulbourethral gland, sometimes known as a Cowper's gland, kind of an older term there. But the bulbourethral gland is prior to ejaculation. It's going to secrete this fluid. The fluid has 2 main purposes. Purpose 1 is basically lubricate the gland's penis, the head of the penis. But 2, it's also meant to clean or neutralize any remnants of acid that was there. Because the urine can be slightly acidic, it's trying to clean out the entire urethra, making sure you don't have traces of urine there that can damage the sperm as they come through. So while the bulbourethral gland isn't actually doing something to help the sperm directly, it's cleaning out the pathway and trying to aid the overall reproductive system. So from this view, it's kind of an interesting perspective. It's going to be more of an anterior view, but as a cross-sectional aspect. So what you're noticing here, you have the seminal vesicle as well as the vas deferens or ductus deferens coming down. They're going to meet and come together right inside the prostate here. That's the ejaculatory duct, and then the prostatic urethra. You'll notice these tiny little glands right here nestled in. That is going to be the bulbourethral gland on each side. So just getting a perspective of where they are and how they're in order of the system. Now, the penis itself, we already mentioned, has the spongy urethra running through it. But we also mentioned you're going to have the corpus spongiosum and corpus cavernosum as erectile tissue. But what's happening here is there's three distinct chambers. The corpus spongiosum is surrounding the urethra, so as it fills with blood and engorges, causes partial erection, it's going to make sure the urethra stays open and doesn't get compressed. So it's creating this tube around it that's protecting the urethra. While the corpus cavernosum is paired dorsal erectile bodies. So there's two tubes of erectile tissue. As they fill with blood, they're causing the majority of what is actually happening as the erection. So both the corpus cavernosum and the corpus spongiosum aiding in the erection, but the corpus spongiosum is protecting the urethra to make sure it doesn't get collapsed. So what really is an erection? It's literally just blood filling these tissues. The blood fills the tissues, it can't leave because the actual vessels leaving are pinched closed. So as the blood comes in, it can't leave, so it causes an increase in blood flow. That increase in blood flow causes the erection to occur. So if we're looking at that from a cross-section view of the penis, now what you can see is down here in the bottom, you're noticing it looks like there's three main blue circles. The two up top, those are going to be the corpus cavernosum. But that one small one around the urethra, that's the corpus spongiosum. So three main erectile tissues really make up the majority of what the penis itself is. All right, so let's circle back to semen. We mentioned how the prostate and all the other glands are secreting the fluid in the semen. Mentioned some parts and pieces, but let's get a little more into how it's working. So we're looking at the secretions and the sperm. That's what makes up semen. Now, the main thing here is nutrients, protection, and activation. That's really what all this solution is trying to do, because it doesn't do any good to deliver the semen when they're not functional. So it's helping them move and keeping them alive. We mentioned this prostaglandins already. The prostaglandins really do play quite an important role, because once the actual sperm and the semen are inside the female reproductive system, it helps to decrease the viscosity of the mucus in the cervix. Because we haven't gotten to the female system yet, but when we get there, this will make more sense. But you need to decrease the viscosity so the sperm can actually travel through the mucus that's present there. Secondly, reverse peristalsis of the uterus itself. And again, when we get back into the female system later, it'll make more sense. But the sperm itself are actually being pulled into the uterus as the uterus has caused a reverse peristaltic motion. So instead of trying to push them out, it causes it to reverse and pull in instead. So these prostaglandins are kind of an important thing for the actual functionality of the gamete trying to reach the other gametes, so the sperm reaching the egg. Now the alkalinity neutralizes some of the acid of the male urethra and the female vaginal canal. It's not going to be a full neutralization, but it helps to lessen the impact. You're also going to find antibiotic chemicals in here trying to protect and kill off any bacteria that could harm the sperm. Now, the interesting thing here is when semen's in the male system, it's liquid. Once it's ejaculated, though, the semen is going to coagulate, kind of form a clump. But obviously, if it's clumped together, the sperm can't go anywhere. So what happens is there's going to be then fibrinolysin that liquefies the sperm. So that's another thing that was inside the semen. So a clump to stay there, trying to stay inside the female system, but then this fibrinolysin liquefies it, allowing the sperm to try to head up through the cervix into the uterus. And all this is only in 2 to 5 milliliters of semen. Now, yeah, there's a range there because everyone's different, obviously. But inside that small amount, that 2 to 5 milliliters, 20 to 150 million sperm per milliliter. Just think about that number for a second. Let's say it's 100 million per milliliter, and we're looking at the 5 milliliter, the higher side. 500 million sperm cells. It could even be more than that. These are just the normal numbers. So really, you're talking vast, huge numbers of gametes, of sperm, are found inside each ejaculation. So a little bit more about the male reproductive system and the composition of semen and its functionality.